Hi, everybody. I'm based in San Diego, California, and I want to thank Rob Danielson of Seoul, Wisconsin, for coming out to San Diego and recruiting me over lunch to work on the Badger Coulee project 4 years ago. So I was an expert for Seoul, Wisconsin and Badger Coulee. I was an expert for a community group in Northeast Missouri on one of these MVP lines called the Mark Twain 345 kV line. So I have some experience now with this process of these different transmission lines. And I think given the nature of this session is local solutions, I'm going to advance this to, we have another session that I'll be speaking at after this about some of the review process and the problems with the review process. We'll get to the first 6 slides later. But I want to start with the technical feasibility, economic feasibility of the local solutions, the local alternatives to this transmission proposal. And this is an excerpt here where they talk about, well, why would we do all this? Do these 17 projects, of which Cardinal Hickory Creek is one. And the rationale given is that, well, if we put all the wind turbines out in western Iowa, for example, we'd only have to build 10 turbines out there for every 11 we'd have to build here. And that's worth putting in billions of dollars of transmission infrastructure. And I mean, at least from a common sense standpoint, that doesn't seem like such an overpowering rationale to do all this. But one of the bits of information that's included with these studies is, what does it cost to put in a wind turbine or a megawatt's worth of wind turbine, about $2 to $3 million per megawatt? Well, this project was actually approved, Cardinal Hickory Creek, by, I call it MISO, not MISO, but by MISO in 2011. And they talk about, well, we've got to go through all these hoops down the road, state permits, but from our standpoint, it's done in 2011. And since 2011, in fact, let me go to the next slide. What I'm talking about now is solar power in Wisconsin or any place in the United States. And what this shows is a recent government report on the decline. Here's 2011, right here. This is 2017 for a residential solar array. It's dropped almost by a factor of 3, or 1/3 the cost it was just 6 years ago. Same with a commercial building. And so the panorama of options has radically changed since 2011 when this was approved. And on utility scale, which is just a few megawatts, we're now under $1 a watt. This report came out a few months ago by the government. So you can look at wind, and wind costs are pretty static. They haven't changed that much over the last decade. Solar has been dropping like a stone and is now in the range of 1/2 to 1/3 the cost for a larger unit than it was then. So we see this kind of a price decline for residential, commercial solar. This is just an example, a photo of a bigger array, but recently, within the last couple of months, a small electric co-op in New Mexico signed a contract for a 3 megawatt solar system for 4.5 cents a kilowatt hour. Yes, the solar strength is greater in New Mexico than it is in Wisconsin, not as much as you would think, but these prices are dropping 20% per year. So there's a spectacular evolution going on in the economic viability of solar power anywhere in the country. These are I did a report in North Carolina recently about the production cost for a residential array, commercial array. These numbers hold for Wisconsin as well. The solar resource strength isn't that different between the two states. 8 to 10 cents, 8 to 11 cents residential, 4 to 6 cents commercial. What do you pay in Wisconsin on average utility rate? 14 cents for residential, 11 retail for commercial. That it's already cost competitive here to do this on a mass scale. The price trajectory of, in this case, it's lithium batteries. Lithium aren't the only batteries available out there for these types of systems, but they're the most popularly known now. 2011, prices up at $800 a kilowatt hour. 2017, $200. And it dropped from $800 to $200 in 6 years from the time MISO approved the Cardinal Hickory Creek project. And so this information, these graphics, that's why you don't lock yourself in to a decade-long solution, a decade in advance of this kind of revolution that's going on right now. I have an off-grid, I live in urban San Diego. I have an off-grid system. We power the house, we power an electric vehicle. I did it because our rates are so high. I wanted to show as an engineer that I could beat the utility putting my own one-off off-grid system in. I didn't quite get there. My costs are a little higher, but there were no commercial residential battery offers at the time. That was 2014. I had to get a sealed lead acid battery. This is an incomplete list of residential lithium battery competitors today. There are now 10 or 12 of them. And these batteries, with their 10-year guarantees and durability, cost less than the system I put in 3 or 4 years ago. And so that too has been a revolutionary development. You have this kind of competition in that business area. This to me is the future of energy in the United States. This is Vermont. This is a project by Green Mountain Power, 2,000 homes in southern Vermont, every one of them equipped with a battery pack, 14 kilowatt hours. It's an investor-owned utility, so they're supposed to make money doing this. They're almost giving these batteries away because they automatically aggregate them to send out power as a virtual power plant, to maintain grid reliability and resiliency, address congestion. And I had called a colleague of mine who used to be the city manager of a city with a municipal utility, and I said, these are an investor-owned utility. They're almost giving these batteries away in 2017. Could you give them away today as a municipal? And he said, depends on whether, we like to make a little margin on it, but it depends. We could do that. And this means and they did this in part because they have a lot of short-term blackouts in this state in wintertime, and that this would allow everybody to ride through those blackouts and serve as in aggregate, a major power facility. And that equation I'd shown earlier about what it costs to do, retail solar power in Wisconsin, at the cost that they're paying in this case, it would only add about 1 cent per kilowatt hour to the cost of the system to have this battery backup. Within the last month, a much larger project was announced by Tesla in South Australia, 50,000 homes, 250 megawatts. This is the future. These projects can happen fast, they're cost effective. Vermont is definitely not any sunnier than Wisconsin. These batteries can also be located out in western Iowa, where the wind is generated, to smooth out the production of that wind power so you don't get these big slugs if it is ever built. And we'll talk about that some more too. Why build wind power that is more costly than solar power that you can have right at your home? And so, in my opinion as an engineer, wind power in the upper Midwest is no longer the framework for the future. It's definitely solar power. There will be wind power built, but it won't be built if you do a heads-up economic comparison when you make that decision. The focus should be right in here. When we need to maintain the transmission and distribution grid, that's not a costly exercise. But the renewable energy, the demand response, energy efficiency, the future is in that circle. Parking lots. One myth that the utilities often put out is that our grid is constrained from running a lot of power up from homes and businesses onto the main grid. That is not true. That the grid can handle large power flows going in the opposite direction with very little upgrading. And this is a recent California Public Utilities Commission study that if you have a battery on that system, no grid upgrading is necessary. And so the idea that we would have to do major overhauling to do that is not correct. And I know the other speakers are going to touch on demand response and energy efficiency. I'll leave that issue for now, except to say that one of the things that we found in the Badger Coulee case was the utilities actually are capable of moving load around at peak time. They just don't do it. They've got all these folks who are signed up to have their load shifted so they don't congest the transmission line, but they're not dispatching when they could avoid congestion. And then it gets used in forums like the Badger Coulee transmission line or Cardinal Hickory Creek to say we got congestion and we got to build another line. One area that I'm focused on right now in climates where it's necessary is reducing the demand, especially from electric heaters that people use in winter. And if you can solve that problem, this is just an example of a unit and air-to-air heat pump that is extremely efficient. I have one of those in my home because I can't do an off-grid system with a conventional heating and cooling system, and they work great. So we have solutions. And some solutions are just happening now naturally. Everyone's putting in LED bulbs. In 2011, that was a big deal. In 2018, it's standard. And that drops energy use from lighting by 80%. The leaders in doing innovative things with solar and batteries are public utilities, municipals and electric co-ops. And so you have more latitude than with an investor-owned utility, and this project happens to be led by Dairyland Power Co-op. And at least in other parts of the country, they are the leaders in doing flexible, innovative projects. Finally, a comment by the CEO of Green Mountain Power. Leveraging the latest innovations like battery storage, we are working with customers to move away from the antiquated bulk grid to a cleaner and more reliable energy system where power is generated closer to where it is used. She is a smart lady. That is definitely the future. And as you can see, I'm an advocate for local solar power, and I hope you are too. Thank you.